So, hi everyone. So, hello Abhinit, can you please paste that link in the our discussion group as well? Today's live link session.
Sure, sir.
Okay, thank you. Yeah. So, if you so Srinivasan, like, no, you had one query regarding a quiz question. Can you please let me know like what? So I could not understand through that message. So can you please repeat that?
Yeah, so typically, right from the lecture, so because the question was about what is true about a bubble, right? So
Yes.
one of the options was a bubble is less likely to occur if people can switch from buying to selling and vice versa.
Yes.
That seems to be true for me because, per my knowledge, because typically a bubble, when people are forced to,
I
continue
think there
buying,
is bubble is less likely to occur.
yeah, less likely to occur,
Correct.
right? So that seems to be a true statement. But see, since the question was only one question is right, not multiple select.
Okay.
So I had chosen that option.
Okay. So it is like so in the class we discussed like two types of theories. Like one says like how bubbles occur, and one said like there is nothing like bubbles. Correct. So in that question, for your information, like that question is directly taken from the core platform, which was one of our reference for that discussion. And in that question, like it is like when you are allowed to frequently buy and sell, then it is more likely to for a bubble to occur, not less likely, because when people can people see price rising, then they start buying, and similarly, like busting of bubbles happens only when like the buying and selling is more frequently happening. Correct. So that was the idea
Actually,
behind that option.
okay. See, the thing is that that is one part. But see, the bubble ends up being self-reinforcement, right? So when people have to keep
Hmm.
buying, right, and the person who has bought it and they is not able
Hmm.
to switch to selling that asset, right? So they have to
Hmm.
continue holding it or buying more. So this is what. So
Hmm.
if there is a sale, right, a person can switch from buying to selling, and they would sell that asset at some point of time. So the price could come down,
Hmm.
so it would correct somewhere, right? So maybe this is the thing is that when of course in any financial market, a person can buy or sell with same ease, right? There is no particular
Yes.
locking, right? Unless a real market, right? But
Yes.
during the bubble, right? If people can go to selling, then it's less likely to occur. That is my part. But the lecture talks only about the ease of buying versus selling versus switching from buying to selling. Maybe I interpreted it that way.
Yeah. Yeah. But I think the most, like, yes, I understand your like the query here. Yes, your thought process is also right in right direction, but like I think the most correct option was the option given. I think option C was there, the momentum state given, I think.
Yes,
Correct.
sir.
Yeah.
So, sir,
Okay.
what about the payback period?
Yeah, payback period is like the minimum period in which you get your money back. So if your initial cost or initial investment is, let's suppose, 5,000 rupees, then what is the minimum time in which you get your 5,000 rupees back? That is the meaning of payback period. The solution which you provided in the discussion group, that was like the calculation for duration, I think, not the payback period.
So basically, payback will only happen in the whole number of years, right? If the
Yes.
payment is going based on early basis.
Yes, like payback is like if nothing is given, then like usually the payment happens at the end of a period. So let's suppose you invested 5,000 rupees, and over next 10 years you are receiving 1,000 rupees each year. So in 5 years, like after 5 years, you will receive 5,000 rupees. So the payback period for this type of investment is 5 years. 5 years.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, and
So
it doesn't have to be whole number of years, right? Because GA there was a question, no?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yes,
I
it's
think
like there it
every
was
month,
specific.
yeah, if every month there is a thing that it could happen on odd years also.
So in the GA question, it was like said that the payment is equally distributed throughout the year. So like if like if half the year is passed, then half of the payment of the year has been happened. So it was given. That's why there the fractional, like the fractional payback period was coming out. But if no information is given, then the general norm is like the payment happens only at the end of a particular period. Okay. Any other questions regarding like the weekly assignments or the quizzes? Anything? Okay, then we will move on to like week 6 content. We discussed week 5, like the half of week 5 content in the last live session, and today like the second half was like the also covered in the week 6 content also, so that will be covered in today's discussion. So week 6 content discusses about like the how individuals make choice. And first the instructor give example of like the how an individual makes choice and when situation like uncertainty, when everything is certain. So for example, like if an individual has an income of 100 units or 100 rupees, and he wants to distribute his income between two goods, X1 and X2, and price of these goods is like 2 and 4, for example. So this budget set equation, like this is the total amount, thi- this is the total amount that he is like spending, and it is his total income. So the amount he is spending, that should be less than or equal to his income. So this inequality gives us a set which we call the budget set. Budget set means like these are the whatever within this bundle is like these bundles are possible for that individual to buy with this given income. Okay. And budget line is like when this inequality we replace this by equality. So when like when individual is spending all of his income, then we get the budget line. And we will see the significance of this, like why this is important for us. And we can represent this in a 2D plane, in a X1, X2 plane. And this is the graphical representation of budget set, that the area like the marked with green lines is the budget set, and this blue line is the budget line. And here the thing to notice, like both these goods, like these are goods, matlab, more of these items is better for that individual. For example, if these are coconut and rice, so if more coconuts you have, it is better for you. If you have more rice, like anything which is giving you a positive, like the positive utility, or like which helps you like feel better, so that we call a good. Similarly, there are many products which are considered as bad, like for example pollution. More of pollution is bad for you, so you would like to have less of pollution. So we will see like what happens when like there is one of a good is bad, then what happens, then that we will be seeing later on. Okay, this was the first. So the budget set gives me the all possible, like the combination of goods like X1, X2 in this case, which are available for this individual who has this income M. So this is the set of, so this is the set of like the combinations which is available for available to an individual. Okay. Next comes like how we can define preferences. So to define preferences, a concept of utility function is used. So what is a utility function? So for example, if let's suppose if that individual which we are considering earlier, so that individual prefers a combination, or we call that a bundle X1, X2. He prefers that over this X1 prime, X2 prime bundle. For example, here above we took the example of coconut and rice. So for example, if an individual prefers 20 coconuts and 10 kg of rice over 10 coconuts and 10 kg of rice, then this utility function is just that if the functional value of this function u should be greater than for this x1 x2 in comparison to the x1 prime and x2 prime. So we use these utility functions to represent a preferences of a particular individual. Okay. And how do we use these? Like, if we can represent the preferences in a functional form, then it is easy for us to determine like what are which combination that individual will prefer. What is the optimal bundle that individual will prefer. So how do we do that? For that, first we derive the indifference curve. So what is the indifference curve? Indifference curve is like a combination of bundles which are equally preferred. So on that curve, the value of this utility function is equal for all the like the collection, all those collection of bundles. The value of this utility function is equal. So for all these bundles, this u x1 x2 will be equal to u bar. So for example, so this will represent a indifference curve. And in the lecture, like professor solves this and they come up to like this, the slope of this indifference curve is called marginal rate of substitution, and that is equal to this like this is the marginal utility with respect to good 1, and this is the marginal utility with respect to good 2. Okay, let's take an example. So for example, like we are continuing with that example only. So for example, if the utility function of that individual is given by this functional form, so u x1 x2 is equal to square root of x1 plus square root of x2. So how can we derive the marginal rate of substitution? We can use this formula. So the partial derivative of u with respect to x1 is 1 by 2 root x1, and through this we can get the marginal rate of substitution is minus of square root of x2 divided by square root of x1. Okay, what is the significance of this MRS, marginal rate of substitution? So for example, if we take a combination, so x1 equal to 25 and x2 equal to 9, and we can we can get the value of MRS using this, like putting these values in this formula, and this MRS is minus 3 by 9. What this signifies is like add this bundle 25,9. So for if we are taking coconut and rice example, so 25 coconuts and 9 kg of rice. If a individual is currently consuming that combination, and he want to change his consumption of x1 for like that is the coconuts. If he wants to like the change the consumption of coconuts, for example, he wants to change the consumption of coconuts by 1 unit. So for example, 1 coconut he wants to replace. So if he want to be on the same level of utility, then he should change the value of x2, that is rice in our example. He should change x2 by minus 3 by 9 times 1. So that should be like minus of 1 by 3 kg of rice. Like he should reduce that, and so he can increase 1 coconut at this point by reducing 3 by 9 kg of rice. If he reduce the amount of rice at that point by this amount, then he will be at the same level of utility. Okay, this is the significance of this marginal rate of substitution. Okay, now we have like these two tools. So I have like what are the possible bundles, what are the like the available bundles to an individual, and what are the preferences of that individual. Now we can combine both of them and we can find the optimal level of consumption given these two conditions. So what is the objective of an individual? That is to maximize his utility. Okay, so he maximizes his utility, but he is constrained by his this budget constraint, which is constrained by the income. So maximize this utility function subject to this budget constraint. And how can we solve this maximization problem? Through our like the mathematics class, we know that we can set up a Lagrangian, and we can derive the first order condition, and then we can come to a solution. So we set up the Lagrangian, and then the first order conditions are like we do the partial derivation of this Lagrangian function with our variables, and we get like linear equations, and then we can solve and we can find out the solution. And what solution we find in this case? So in this case, the solution we get is the marginal rate of substitution is equal to the slope of the budget line. So slope of this budget line and marginal rate of substitution from this utility function, these two should be equal at the optimal point. So for example, in our example, so the utility function was square root of x1 plus square root of x2, and the budget constraint was 2x1 plus 4x2 is less than equal to 100. We can solve this. We can directly use this formula, and we get like through this condition we get like x1 equal to 4x2, and we can put these values in the budget constraint, back in the budget constraint, and we find that like x1 is 100 by 3 and x2 is 50 by 6. So this was the case of like when there is no uncertainty, all situations are certain. Okay, we can represent this like by we can do a graphical illustration of these concepts also. So the budget set I have already described. So let's suppose his income is m, so this point will be m by p1, this should be m by p2, and slope of this budget line is minus p1 by p2, correct? And similarly, like indifference curve, so indifference curve was u of x1 x2 is equal to u bar. So this is for u bar. So if you change this value of u bar to like u bar naught, so this is u bar naught. So if it is more, like if we are moving away from this origin, then like the value of utility is increasing in this indifference curve plane. So when we combine them, so what happens when we combine them? So I have this budget constraint, and we have multiple indifference curves, but the indifference curve which is just like tangent to this budget line, that gives me the like this blue point, that is my optimal point. So and that is essentially the condition which we find, like this solution which we found by setting up that Lagrangian. So this we call as the tangency condition also, because at this point like this utility function is tangent to our budget line. So that's why we call that solution condition as tangency condition.
Actually, the budget line is a tangent to the utility function, right?
Yes. Yes, budget line is tangent to utility function. Okay. So this was the case for the case under certainty. And what happens when we introduce uncertainty to our economic environment? So that is coming up next. So if you have any questions, anything you want me to repeat, you can let me know. So in one of the week, like in I think week 2 or week 3, we discussed about like intertemporal budget constraint, correct? So that can also be like, if we understand this simple budget constraint, then we can also derive the intertemporal budget constraint. So they are like here our goods are x1 and x2. There these x1 and x2 are replaced by consumption in period 1 and consumption in period 2. So that is the main crux of that intertemporal budget constraint. Now, like if we introduce uncertainty in our economic environment, then what happens? Then like assume like there are two states possible, like one is a good state, one is a bad state. In good state, your like output or your revenue, whatever you can say, so which gives you utility or your consumption level. In the good state, that is 100. In bad state, that is 25 only. And the bad states happen with 20% probability, and good states happen with 80% probability. Okay. So now how can we derive a state contingent budget constraint. So here what happens, like there are two types of consumption we can have. So one is the consumption which I or that individual do when the bad state occurs, and second the consumption that he like the amount that he consumes that is if the good state occurs. So that we represent by CB and CG. CB is the bad state consumption and CG is the good state consumption. Okay. So how can we derive like the a budget constraint like the containing these two values, and that we call state contingent budget constraint. So in that what we do, so for example that individual he buys the insurance of amount X to like the to recover in if the bad state happens. So what this means, so what this means, like if this bad state is occurring, then he will receive extra X amount by that insurance company. And if the good state occurs, then he will not receive the insurance amount. Okay. But he has to pay the premium in either of the cases, whether bad state occurs or the good state occurs. And here it is given that this premium amount is 0.2 times, like the 20% times of the total coverage. So total coverage is X, so he has to pay the like the 0.2 times X amount in the form of premium. Okay. So now if I have this information, then we can write the values of CB and CG. Like if bad state occurs, then his total consumption is like he get 25 because bad state is occurring. He pays 0.2 times X in premiums and he receives X amount by the insurance company. Similarly, if the good state is occurring, then 100 is his total output in that case, and he is paying 0.2 times X in the form of premium. And we have these two equations, and we can eliminate this insurance amount at X, like we can eliminate this X from these two equations, and we can get the A equation which is containing only the CB and CG. So that equation is like 0.2 times CB plus 0.8 CG, and that is equal to 85. You can do the algebraic calculations on your own, and you can see like whether this is correct or not. Okay, so this form of budget constraint is called the state contingent budget constraint because the variables here are the state contingent consumptions. Okay. Now we know like there is uncertainty in our economic environment, so we are not certain like which situation is going to happen. So if like the utility function is given by this square root of consumption which is happening, so what is the expected utility? So what is the expected utility given the situation like there is 20% chance of bad state occurring and 80% chance of good state occurring? So the expected utility is like 20% times like the utility by CB consumption and 80% times consumption in the good state. Okay. So this is my expected utility function. Through this, I can like derive the marginal rate of substitution for these two state contingent consumptions, and this is coming out to be like 1 by 4 square root of CG by CB. And we can use our earlier like we are by equating MR is equal to slope. This is like slope of state contingent budget constraint. Okay. If we use this like the optimality condition, then we come up to the solution that like at the solution point, this CG like the consumption in good state and consumption in bad state should be equal. And if we use this back into our budget constraint in this, and here we get like in both states, this consumption should be 85. That is the optimality condition in this uncertain economic environment. If you have any concerns, any questions regarding these concepts, you can raise them here. Okay. So next, Next, there was a like the slight discussion about this concept of certainty equivalent. So, what is a certainty equivalent? So, that is a like amount. So, if that amount you get with certainty, so like for sure you are getting that amount, and that is giving you like equal utility that you are getting, like the expected utility which you are getting when you are playing this like playing this lottery. So here like the lottery or the uncertain situation. So here uncertain situation was like there was 20% chance that you will get 25 amount of consumption, and there was 80% chances that you will get 100 amount of consumption. Okay, here what is your expected utility? If this is the like if this is the situation, then the expected utility you can calculate by putting the values in this, and you are getting like your expected utility values to 9. Okay, so what is the certainty equivalent of this uncertain situation or this lottery? Okay, so that is like what is the equivalent certain amount that gives you the same amount of utility. So the utility was like u of c was square root of c. So if I am getting c like the ce amount, and my utility is same as my earlier expected utility, through this equation I can get like my certainty equivalent for this uncertain situation is 81. So if I get 81 rupees for certain, that is giving me same utility which I am like same utility as I am expected to get by playing this lottery or by being in this uncertain situation where like the 20% chances that I will get 25 and 80% chances that I will get 100. So this concept of certainty equivalent is clear to you. If you have any concerns, you can like let me know. Okay. So earlier in our earlier discussion we had both the goods, like both the values were goods, correct? So like x1 is a good and x2 is a good. But in finance we know that like hello,
Yes, sir.
am I audible? Am I
Yes,
audible?
sir.
Okay, my screen is visible to you.
Yes,
It
sir.
is visible.
Okay, okay. Thank you. So in finance we know that like so first let's take an example like what happens when there is like one good is like x1 is good and x2 is bad. Let's do okay, whatever it is, reverse that. X1 is bad and x2 is good. Okay, so what this means like more of like less of x1 is preferred, is preferred, and here more of x2 is preferred. Okay, so what this means, so if I take a utility function, so this utility function u x1 x2, why this is not being recorded? Am I audible?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, you're audible. Yeah.
Okay. Okay, sorry, because I am having network issue. So So let's suppose if I have a utility function representing this situation, so we say like this x1 which is bad and x2 is good. So what happens? So the marginal utility, this del u del x1, that will be negative, and del u del x2, that will be positive. Correct? And through this, if I get the MRS, that is negative of del u by del x1 divided by del u by del x2, and this will be positive through this. Okay, so what this means, like the slope of my indifference curve, that is positive throughout. So how we can represent this in an x1 x2 plane? So earlier, like when both my, like the both these x1 and x2 were goods, then my the indifference curve was this downward sloping because MRS was negative in that case. But what if MRS is positive? Then this will be the form of my indifference curve in that case. Okay, and why this is relevant? So when in our, like the in our discussion, like when we introduce the risky assets in our discussions, then as we have, like very frequently we hear that like the high return and less risk, like we, an individual or an investor prefers higher return and less amount of risk, less amount of, like we represent this return by the, like the mean value of that return, and like risk, we represent this risk by variation, which is represented by standard deviation. So if I want to represent these preferences by in a, like the mean return and standard deviation of return, like the in this 2D plot, then this will be the form of the indifference curves which I will be getting. So if let's suppose this is u0, u1 and u2, so if we move in this direction, then my utility is increasing, so u2 is greater than u1, greater than u0. Is this, like the concept clear to you? So like how we are getting these, like reverse form of indifference curve in this case. Is it clear?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Okay. Next, like now we have got the indifference curves or the preferences part. So when we have risky assets in our portfolio, so this is the form of indifference curves which we are getting. And next is like how we can come up to a budget constraint in this case. So for example, if in our portfolio we have two types of assets, one is risk free and second is risky. The risk free asset, like there is no variation in return of that risky asset. So the return of risk free asset is RF, and in the case of risky asset, so the expected return of that risky asset is RM, and the standard deviation of return of that risky asset is sigma M. Okay. So then how can we, and this is like in our earlier discussion, we have known like if there is more risk in a, if asset is more risky, then its expected return is tends to be higher. So this RM is more than RF. Okay. Okay. And so now, like in our portfolio, if I am devoting X amount of my wealth to this risky asset and 1 minus X amount of wealth to this risk-free asset, then my average return, like the expected return, that will be equal to like X times RM plus 1 minus X times RF. Okay. And second thing is like there is only this risky asset. This, like I am devoting X amount to this risky asset, and by doing calculations, like by calculating the standard deviation, I can, like I can come up to like, by calculating this standard deviation, I can come up to this formula of variance. Like variance of my portfolio will be equal to X square times the variance of this risky asset. And through this we can represent by the standard deviation of my portfolio is equal to X times the amount which I am investing in risky asset times the standard deviation of risky asset. So from here I can get X equal to sigma M divided by sigma X divided by sigma M. Here the point to note is like I want to plot between Rx, which is the return on my portfolio, and sigma X, which is my standard deviation of my portfolio. And this like RM, I already know like this RM is given to me and sigma M is given to me. Okay. Okay. So now if I replace this value of X in this equation, then what do I get? So if I replace this value of X, then I get this form of equation and I can rearrange the values and I get like Rx equal to this Rf plus something multiplied by Rm. So this is the slope of my this budget constraint. And if I plot this budget constraint in a like the in this mu and sigma plane, then I get like this slope is positive and the value of the slope is Rm minus Rf upon sigma M. And this is the budget constraint which I am getting. So we have budget constraint, we have preferences, we can combine them and we can come up to a we can come up to a like the our preferred choice where like similar to like where this like this MRS is equal to slope of budget constraint. Okay. If you have any questions regarding this, like this we will be repeating this like the how this choice under uncertainty is taking place. We will be repeating this concept in later weeks also because we will be deriving our one of the important model that is capital asset pricing model through this analysis only. So we will be repeating this again. But if you have any questions, any concerns regarding this, you can like raise them here. So this is clear to you, correct?
Yes, sir.
So now if we let's suppose we have a choice between two assets, two risky assets, X and Y, and we know this information like this Rx minus Rf upon sigma X is greater than Rm. So this okay. So if this condition is given to me, so then how can we can compare these values like the slope component which we are getting when we are deriving this budget constraint. So the asset which is giving me the higher slope, we prefer that. Why? Because for example, if I have this sigma, this is mu, and let's suppose this is my first budget constraint, this is my second budget constraint. Okay, because this RF is fixed, so risk-free rate is fixed, just the slope is changing. And so if I come up to, so if my slope is higher, then I can go to a higher indifference curve. So that means I can have higher utility if my slope of budget constraint is higher. That's why the asset which is giving me the higher slope, the investor should prefer that asset, that risky asset. So this was the concept. So if this is my U1, this is U0. So U1 is greater than U0. So I am able to get higher utility. That's why the investor should prefer like in this case, he should prefer this asset X over asset Y. Okay, like, and this measurement of risk part, like that will be like discussed extensively in later weeks. So the so the this beta is one of the part of like how we can measure the risk. So beta is nothing but like the risk of that asset I divided by the risk of the whole market. So the whole market has a risk. So this we can represent by variance of market, and this is the covariance of that asset with the market. And if assets are like the asset is not correlated with market, then this like beta is equal to 0. This covariance is 0, that's why this beta equals to 0. And using this formula, we can come up to like the a useful equation for our asset pricing. So that is like the like this RI is the return on that asset I, and that should be equal to RF plus beta times RM minus RF. This RM is the market return, RF is the risk-free return. So using this formula, we can compute the rate of return of a particular asset type. We will be revisiting this capital asset pricing model extensively in later weeks. So a brief introduction was given in week 6. So you can take a look at like the content slides and lectures of week 6. If you have any questions regarding the week 6 content or any content prior to that, you can ask those questions here now. Avinit?
No, sir.
No questions?
No, sir.
So there was a query in week 5 assignment question, I think.
Yeah, actually,
Question
option given are wrong, basically.
options given are wrong. That's what you are saying. So let okay, let me check 1 second. Okay, this is correct.
For question number 6.
Yes, for question number 6. Let me check. Okay. So no questions regarding, so I can stop the streaming. Okay. So in that question, like it is like the cost is changing in these two conditions, like the good weather and bad weather conditions. So that's why the idea is like you should first calculate the rate of return in both the condition and then calculate the expected rate of return.
Okay, got it.
Correct. So that is why you are getting a different answer. You are using that expected value in the earlier form, but that thing you cannot use here because the cost is changing. The examples which we did in our classes or the lectures, there the like the usually the amount, the revenue or the payoff date is changing according to situation, but the cost remains same. But here in this question, the cost is changing. So that's why you should calculate the rate of return in both the condition, and then you should like use the expected value formula. Then you will get to the answer. I have checked the calculations and like the answers are coming out fine for me.
Yeah, got it.
Okay.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, thank you. Any more questions? If you have, please let me know. So can you please let me know the overall quiz experience? The questions were fine, like the difficulty level was okay with you, like both of you.
Yeah, the question difficulty level is around medium, and
Okay.
actually the time given with the given constraint of center calculator and all those stuffs. So it's lengthier than 1 hour because mostly it will averagely take around, if you know every formula and all calculations, still it will take around 1 hour 15 minutes or more. And if you don't or need to think, it will take more time.
Okay, the one thing which I got from our discussion is like the values should be smaller, like so that would be better for you, like when you are using, like most preferably if the calculation can be done by hand. So that was not the case in our first 4 weeks, but in coming weeks, like we can give questions which can be done by hand calculation. So we would prefer like those type of questions which test your conceptual knowledge, not the like the calculations or these
Yeah.
kind of
But
things.
yeah,
Uh,
even in the quiz, the numbers were mostly on the smaller side, so it was okay, right? We didn't have a million question or
Yes, yes,
that way.
correct.
But that daily 100 rupee, right? That that the calculations definitely took a bit more time. Uh,
Correct,
but
yeah, yeah, like
yeah, another thing is that maybe Abhinit and I, not to boast, but probably we are the not representative because I know Abhinit he also actually helps others, in our groups about the concepts. So we should
correct.
probably get a larger response to your question about the difficulty level because
Yeah, yeah, that's
he
what
may
I
find
got
it
from.
easier than others too.
Yes, yes, true, true, true. But others,
uh,
like they very few people attend these sessions, so I tried to gather some information. So that's what I got from our Google discussion forum, that like this is the major issue which was observed
yeah,
by most of the.
the thing was the question, the first question or second question in my site actually. The question about
Hmm.
the calculation, which was around 220359, right? Something sort of that.
Yes, yes,
And think of that number using any of the calculator, we are calculating different values, and all the values are getting we are getting different, and now calculating and typing that value using the mouse.
correct, correct. I got your like concern. Like these are like these exams happen in those TCS centers, correct? So
Right.
where correct. Okay, okay, I got that. Like
So Abhinit,
uh,
did your paper have some ways you have to input the numbers,
uh,
put the
yeah,
values? Oh, okay. I don't know. My set was all had multiple choice. I don't know whether there was
no,
anything where I had to
not
input the
about
number.
not about NAT. I'm asking about that calculation, because that
Ah,
calculation
yeah,
is technical number,
yeah.
no?
Calculations are time consuming. Yeah.
yes,
Basically, sir, if you want to give the large number, it's okay, but that should be in form of like that should be a, let's say, million or billion. So the calculation become
yes.
limited to that only. That at last we can add zeros or remove zeros at the time of calculation and then add zeros.
Correct, correct. I got your point. So we will take care of this like in upcoming exams. But in
Right,
the weekly assignments, we can it is okay to give like some
right, sir.
lengthy calculative questions. Correct. Yeah.
Right,
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
See,
Fine. Fine.
weekly assignments also, we of course we use our own calculators. There is a
Correct.
in the assignment also there is a version of the TCS calculator available, the same format, but that takes keyboard input. See, when you're inputting
Yes.
keyboard, no, typing 1 2 3 4 5 is just 1 2 3 4 5, right? But when the mouse, it is like 5 clicks. so that is
Yes,
what
yes.
the time takes and the takes. But that way, the assignments can
Yeah, I
be
understand.
with the large numbers. That won't be a major issue.
Yeah. You can provide
Oh.
something similar to that. Like in the lecture, sir used the calculation values in thousands, and now the values are given 60, 70. So we can assume that it's a 60,000, and you can ask directly the answer in
Correct.
directly 60,000 it is, or there 62,000 it is like that. So that can be a pretty good question. Like we have to think of zeros. If we miss out the zeros, we can even give the wrong answers.
Correct. Yeah, I
One-
got your point.
Yeah, one positive feedback I had was that you always have conceptual questions, right? And it is
Yes.
difficult to because obviously they have to have direct reference from the lecture, but the questions that I found were pretty much important concepts, right? That people should remember. So that way, the conceptual questions were on the important concepts. It's also possible to
Yeah.
take a obscure concept and ask a conceptual question, right?
Right.
But that obscure concept is not very important. Then people may not have remembered it, or people may not have paid attention to it. The conceptual questions seem to be quite apt. That's what I found them. So
Right.
Okay. Thank you.
That 100 rupees calculation was actually, if you think in a calculation way, it was tough. But if you think in a formula way, it was direct question, and using that formula, we can get to the answer. This is the
Yes,
future analysis.
that question was regarding like the using the annuity formula, I think. Correct?
Yeah, future identity formula.
Yes.
CYR into 1 plus R to the
Correct.
power
Correct.
T minus 1.
Correct. So yeah, in that question, like the 1 plus R to the power something, so that calculations become something hefty. So we will try to like not to give like these lengthy numbers, like bulky numbers. Okay. Thanks for your feedback. So we will take this into account.
Okay, so thank you, sir.
Okay. Any other questions? You can like write an email to me or like drop in like in our Google discussion forum. So that is
Sure, sir.
okay. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
yeah, and one last thing, my request, Shiv, is that on the video numbering, right? So I think
Yeah,
you
I have
upload them, but I
escalated-
think somebody else uploads them. You can just check with them. So
Yeah, I escalated to the uploading team. So we are not the one who uploads on the YouTube and creates those links, but I have escalated this issue to the team. But like I don't know. I will also again remind them
yeah, you
regarding
can,
this issue.
and you can also tell them that, because see, the first time, right? So if you get it done once, then you don't have to repeat this for the next terms, right? The same lectures will be there, right?
Correct.
And then I think so they are exactly, so each week, so we are week 7 first, and then week 6, week 5, and within each week it is exactly in the reverse order. But I don't know, right? After seeing them, I know that they are exactly in reverse order, but
So
without seeing them,
earlier I suggested them to like number them like 1 2 3 4 and continuous numbering, like 10 11 12 in this continuous form, but they have not. So now what I will suggest them, like you just add a week component in your like naming that video lecture. So
yeah.
week 1 lecture 1, week 2 lecture 2, so they like that will be helpful to use, I think.
It will be,
Yeah,
but the issue
will,
is, I got the issue actually. So Srinivasan sir, actually, it is issue from the Narayan sir. So basically, what happens now? He gets a bunch of data from different subjects. Like in the diploma level and foundation level, few courses are getting added up in the lectures or in some of the changes. Like in MAD application, I know that there is a content adding as a view 3 component instead of view 2.
okay.
Because of that issue, sometimes they miss us out.
Yeah, they have like lot of subject this time. So, but I will again remind them, and so let's see like if in the coming weeks they rectify this issue.
Sure, sir. Thank you, sir.
Okay, thank you, Srinivas. Thank you, Abhinit, for attending.
Yeah, thank you then. Bye.
Bye, sir.